Thousands of years ago, in a place called Jerusalem, a powerful king named Antiochus invaded the land. He tried to force the Jewish people who lived there to worship Greek gods that they didn't believe in. He did this by destroying their holy temple and all the sacred objects inside it, including the menorah. However, a small group of people called the Maccabees fought against the king and his large army, and they won. The Maccabees returned to their destroyed temple and tried to restore their sacred menorah. They noticed that it had hardly any oil left to burn the candles, only enough for one day. They lit it anyway, and instead of lasting only one day, it burned for 8 whole days, which they saw as a miracle. Do you know what this old tale is about? It's the story that began the holiday of Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a holy celebration for Jewish people who follow the religion of Judaism. It commemorates Jewish people's struggle for their religious freedom. Hanukkah is also known as the Festival of Lights. The celebration of Hanukkah usually occurs in late November or in December and lasts for 8 days, due to the miracle of the oil lasting 8 days. During Hanukkah, people light a HACHAANAKAH in their home. It's similar to the sacred menorah in the temple, except that it has more candles and is only used during Hanukkah. As you can see, the HACHAANAKAH has 8 main arms and a 9th which is taller than the rest. This 9th arm is called the shamash, and it's used to light the other 8 candles, one for each day of Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a time shared between family and friends, and a time for lots of food. Since the miracle of the oil is central to the celebration of Hanukkah, Jewish people celebrate this time with foods that are cooked in oil, such as potato cakes called latkes and jelly donuts. Just like many other celebrations around the world, one of the traditions of Hanukkah is the exchange of gifts. This exchanging of gifts is called mishloach manot, and it's a mitzvah. A mitzvah is a rule or commandment written in the Torah, the holy text of Jewish people, and it states what God wants them to do. One other popular tradition of this special Jewish time is a game called dreidel. It's played with a square spinning top which looks like this, and each side has a Hebrew letter. There are 2 types of dreidels depending on where you live. If you live inside Israel, which is the country where the miracle of the oil occurred, the Hebrew letters translate to "A great miracle happened here." If you live outside Israel, the letters translate to "A great miracle happened there." Everyone celebrates special days in their own way. Different people have different traditions that they enjoy during their festivals. During Hanukkah, you can say Chanukah Sameach, which means Happy Hanukkah.
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, No 8 and no 9, because that is the actual traditional menorah. That menorah with the 9 candlesticks is not in the Bible. You will never find it in the Bible. You'll only hear or mention, or you only hear of it or being mentioned of it by the fake Jews, the Jewish people. You'll find it or maybe hear about it in the Talmud, which is also a fake and non-authoritative writings or gatherings or oral traditions of the real Israelites that is only pertaining to Jewish people. If you don't know, by watching the ISUPK under commanding General Yohana, you'll be learning how these Jewish folklores and fairy tales came into existence, you know, spawning from Herod converting into Judaism and the entire Khazarian Empire adopting the religion and converting to Judaism, and upon its downfall, spreading it throughout Eastern Europe, which is where a lot of Jewish people can trace their ancestries from. So, this is what the real menorah looks like. It has 7 candlesticks. It does not have 9. We do not eat potato cakes or before potato cheesecakes or jelly-filled donuts cooked in excess amounts of oil. We eat fried chicken and all types of good stuff because that's what Black and Hispanic and Native American culture consists of. Everything else that you just saw in this video was entirely garbage. It was created by Jewish people. The Talmud was created by Jewish people. The only thing that they may have gotten accurate was the wars and the stories of these wars that you read about, that you saw in the very beginning of this video. But before we get to the battles and stories that led up to HACHAANAKAH, I would like for you to get that scripture, the scripture in the Bible. If you type in the 7 candlesticks, no, it should be in the Old Testament. You might have to put in KJV at the end of that. No, go back. Just type in KJV. Scroll down. Go back up. You just passed it. Candlesticks in the Bible. Keep scrolling up. No, keep scrolling up. Right there. You just passed it. Scroll down. Let's see. You're going too fast, Doc. Slow down. Go back up. Start from the beginning. All right. Even the weight for the candlestick of gold and last but weight for candlesticks. That should burn out the miracle. Pure gold. Untuned voice. Candlesticks. Keep going down. You gonna say something?
I believe it's described as 6 candlesticks with the main drinks.
Yes. And the candlesticks. Let me see if I get it. As we're getting it, Shalom, Lord in Christ. I'm Priest Ashar Gapan of the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Started out at 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under commanding General Yohana. And here in this school, we teach the truth according to the Bible, not according to fairy tales, not according to the false beliefs of different races of people who've taken our identity and our culture. But we teach the truth to Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans throughout the entire earth, right? And today is the history class for ISUPK. Joining me today, I have Priest and Officer Aisha Ya'ala holding down the computer. I have a young man T in the building, and I have another brother that has joined us today. What's your name again, brother? Angeli, brother A, in the building. So what we're going to be doing is actually going over the stories that led up to what HACHAANAKAH is. We're not going to be talking about the myth of the candlestick burning for 8 days. We're not going to be talking about how the oil was only supposed to last 1 day and it was a miracle. We're not going to be talking about how Jewish people were in a cave somewhere and they only had oil for 1 day, to all that garbage that we learned about in school and in this empire. We're going to learn about facts according to the Bible, right? You found it? Read Bible Extra.
Exodus chapter 25 and verse 30.
So this is Exodus chapter 25, starting at verse 32. We're going to describe to you what the real menorah looks like according to the Bible. Read.
Verse 31, and thou shalt make a candlestick of pure gold. Of beaten work shall the candlestick be made. His shaft and his branches his bowls, his knops, and his flowers shall be of the same. And 6 branches shall come out of the sides of it. 6 branches shall come out of the sides of it.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 3 on this side. 1, 2, 3, 3 on this side. So that's 6 altogether. Keep going.
3 branches of the candlestick out of the one side, and 3 branches of the candlestick out of the other side.
3 branches coming out on the left side. 3 branches coming out onto the right side. Keep going.
3 bowls made like unto almonds, with a knot and a flower in one branch, and 3 bowls made like almonds in the other branch, with a knot and a flower.
So now it's going more descriptive into how the menorah, the candlestick, actually looks. Scroll down a bit. Read verse 37.
And thou shalt make the 7 lamps thereof, and they shall light
7
the
what?
lamps. The 7 lamps thereof.
So here's 1 lamp, 2 lamps, 3 lamps, 4 lamps, 5 lamps, 6 lamps, 7 lamps. 1 in the middle, 3 coming out on this side, 3 coming out on the other side. So 6 plus 1 is 7. 7 lamps. Keep going.
And they shall light the lamps thereof.
What?
And they shall light the lamps thereof.
So you all saw me starting to light these lamps, that each one having 1 candle in each lamp, totaling 7. 3 on one side, 3 on the other. Keep going.
That they may give light over against it.
Let me give what?
Light.
And so we lit them. And this is what the real menorah looks like. You will not find any mention of any other menorahs in the Bible. No 9 menorahs, no 4 on the one side, 4 on the other side, and 1 in the middle. That is false doctrine. That is Jewish fairy tales, Jewish fables, Jewish folklores. There is no record collection in the Bible or in the Apocrypha, which was books that were taken out of the Bible, that mention 9 candlesticks, that mention oil lasting for 8 days when it was only supposed to last for 1 day. If you actually do more research, you'll find out that it wasn't until centuries later, through the Talmud oral tradition, that it was talked about being that the oil lasted for 8 days. That is not true according to the Bible. Again, that is from the Talmud, and the Talmud is something that Jewish people, converts to a religion that was called Judaism, created amongst themselves. Those latte cakes, whatever you want to call them, those are not an Israelite custom. Those are a Jewish custom. If you do the research of them, I actually was looking it up earlier today. Those latte cakes, the Latkes, actually come from Eastern Europe, primarily where the Slavics used to live, which is where also the Khazarians Empire was. So now that all that garbage is in the trash, let's actually go into the history of the battles and stories that led up to HACHAANAKAH. Can you please go to 1 Maccabees chapter 1. We're going to start at 1 Maccabees chapter 1. Now, be patient. It's a lot of information that we're about to go over. It's a lot of histories, dates, events, peoples, places, and battles that we are about to read that led up to the Feast of Dedication, the rededicating of the temple when we were able to take it back during the time of the Maccabees. Now, if you can bring that on the screen, share that, Baba Kasha. You can just put it like a little screen, perfect. Okay. Please read.
1 Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 1. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Shatum, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece.
Now, if you don't know about Greek history, Macedonians are not the real Greeks. The Macedonians were a people living in the mountains that the real Greeks took in because of their prowess in military combat. And Philip, Alexander's father, was a great military advisor and general and warrior, and his son took after him. Now, Alexander the Great, who the world calls the Great, is saying that he was actually a Macedonian and not a Greek. He killed Darius during the wars with Persia and the Medes, and he reigned all over this vast empire, the first Greek to ever do so. Keep going.
Verse 2. And made many wars.
And made what?
Many wars.
He made many wars. He went to battle with Egypt. He went to battle with Syria. He went to battle with Israel. He went to battle with the Persians, the Medes, the people, the Babylonians, the Syrians. He went to war with everyone to make his empire as great as it can be. Keep going.
And won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth.
And he took over and ruled over many kingdoms after conquering and winning these battles. Keep going.
And went through to the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up.
He defeated everyone that stood in his path. He conquered every land that was within his eyesight. He took over every kingdom that stood in his way until there was nothing left for him to conquer. Keep going.
And he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruled over countries and nations and kings, who became tributaries unto him.
And because of his conquests being successful, he ruled over many nations and many peoples, and they were all to give him tribute or payment yearly. Keep going.
And after these things he fell sick.
He what?
He fell sick.
Because he was a homosexual. Straight up and down. The Macedonians took on the customs of the Greeks. They were homosexuals. If you read about a lot of the history of Alexander the Great, you will see great evidence of him being a homosexual, right? You'll see a lot of evidence of him engaging in all types of sexual deviancies. Keep going.
And perceived that he should die.
And he knew that he was going to pass away.
Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them, while he was yet alive.
We're going to hold that right there, right? But I want you on a different tab to look up the 4 generals underneath Alexander the Great, right? So he was going to die, and on his deathbed, he gathered the 4 men that he knew since his youth, that were by his side as he was conquering the known world at this time. Can you read them, please?
Ptolemy, Cassander.
The first one was Ptolemy.
Cassander.
Seleucus.
And Antigonus.
When Alexander died, his kingdom was split into 4, and each one of these generals, right, took one section of the empire and ruled it as their own, right? So if you see this map, we can see, you can share this real quick. On this map, we can see where each person ruled. So in the what we call it, like in Persia, right? Seleucus took over. In Israel, going up to Syria, what is that? Turkey, I believe. Turkey. It was Antiochus. You had Lysimachus, I think that's his name. Cassander taking over where the Greeks were, over near to where Rome is. And you got Ptolemy, who took over northeastern Africa, Egypt, leading into Israel. Okay, you can get rid of that and go back to the scriptures. So upon his deathbed, these 4 generals took over one part of the empire as their own. Keep going.
So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died.
So after all this conquest, he only ruled for 12 years. And then due to, his actions off the battlefield, he died. Keep going.
And his servants bear rule, everyone in his place.
So these four generals, his servants, ruled, and each one having their own section of Alexander's kingdom, and ruled. Keep going.
And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves.
They did what?
They all put crowns upon themselves.
And each one became a king over that section of the empire. Keep going.
So did their sons after them.
And as a king would normally do, they would pass the empire, the kingdom, down to their seeds, their sons and their sons' sons. Keep going.
Many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth.
And you know what happened after many years? Read that again.
And evils were multiplied in the earth.
And during their rule, evils multiplied within the earth. Sin was going rampant. The destruction that they were contributing to the earth exceeded. Because of them ruling, now instead of just having one ruler and having one command, you have 4 rulers ruling that known world and giving all types of contrary laws, making people do things they don't want to do, making people convert or die. Keep going.
And there came out of them a wicked root.
A what?
A wicked root.
And out of one of these empires came out a very wicked root. Now, this wicked root we're going to read about because it goes into the wars and stories and battles that led into the Feast of Dedication, which is HACHAANAKAH.
Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes.
Who?
Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes.
Keep going.
Son of Antiochus the king, who had been an hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks.
So we see that he's starting to come into power. Keep going.
In those days went there out of Israel wicked men.
Wicked who?
Wicked men.
So in Israel, wicked men, people who began to sin, commit great atrocities. Keep going.
Who persuaded many.
Who did what?
Who persuaded many.
That's your Christian pastor today. Out of America came many wicked men. That is your religious leaders. That is the religious leaders of blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans today who became wicked men, persuading many. Those are the politicians that you vote for, who are so embedded into American society and American way of life that they have become wicked, turned their backs against the Lord, and are now persuading their people to vote this way or vote that way. Keep going.
Saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen.
And do what?
And make a covenant with the heathen.
Go to Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse I think 8, either verse 7, chapter 7, verse 7 or verse 8. Sorry, scroll back up. Keep going, scroll up. Keep going. Start at verse 2. This is Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 2.
And when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee.
And now this is talking about when Moses and the Israelites were going into the wilderness and the heathens were on the land. This is what we were supposed to do. Keep going.
Thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them.
We were supposed to do what?
Smite them and utterly destroy them.
So to these heathens, we were to destroy them, to smite them, to wipe them off the face of the earth. Keep going.
Thou shalt make no covenant with them.
What?
Thou shalt make no covenant with them.
We were told very specifically to make no covenant with the heathen. Go back to the other verse. Don't close this out. Go back to the other verse. What does it say that they did?
Saying, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen.
So here, they want us to go make a covenant with the heathen. But during the time of Moses, what does it say?
Thou shalt make no covenant with them.
We were never supposed to make a covenant with any other race of people, ever. Because the word of God doesn't change at all. Keep reading the Maccabees.
That are round about us.
Now these wicked men, because they saw the destruction of their people, just like any person of wealth in America who's black and Hispanic, they don't want to suffer with their people. They want to try to find some way where they can find some crumb that can make them prosper. That's kind of like a house slave and a field slave. The house slave has all these extra benefits because they're in the house with the master. They get to eat better food. They get to wear better clothes compared to the field slave where they don't get the best food, where they have to wear worn out and tattered clothing, where they have to do the most strenuous and rigorous work. Keep going.
For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow.
Now this also goes back to the time of Moses. Because when Moses had went up into the mountaintop, the people wanted to go back into Egypt because they were hungry, they were cold, they were starving. You know, they had no shelter. They didn't have 3 meals a day. You know, they wanted to worship the golden calf. They wanted to go back and join Egypt because they were more comfortable living as a slave than living as a free man. And here, they want to do the same thing as well. Alexander the Great came through Israel and devastated Israel. And they're thinking about these wicked men are making the people remember how difficult it is to be on our own, to rule ourselves, and how much more easier and how much more reliable it is to be a slave to someone else. Keep going.
So this device pleased them well.
And you know what? This plan was a very good plan to these wicked men. And this plan, when they said this plan to the people started to think, you know, maybe this might be a good idea to be slaves again. Because being on our own is very difficult. Keep going.
Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen.
So then some people just took it a step further. Let's just go to the king, right? Let's go to this heathen king, this Greek king, and let's get him to give us permission to do things that they do. Keep going.
Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem.
So they wanted to be like the Greeks who had the Olympics. They built a place of exercise. Keep going.
According to the customs of the heathen.
According to who?
The customs of the heathen.
So a place of exercise, a gymnasium, those are things that belong to the Greeks. And now we wanted to adopt those same customs to ourselves. Keep going.
That's a lot. Just to take it a step, like it was broken down on Thursday, their places of exercise were very, very LGBT places of activity. They were not like, you know, they were just harmlessly working out.
Right. Keep going.
Verse 15, and made themselves uncircumcised.
Made them what?
Uncircumcised.
Now there's a custom according to according to our traditions and our customs in the Bible. On the 8th day, all males that are born are to be circumcised. And the point is that it's to bond them through pain to the Lord. Right? Keep going.
And forsook the holy covenant.
And what?
Forsook the holy covenant.
And the holy covenant was for us to obey God, to adhere to his commandments, his statutes, and his laws forever. Because that is the whole duty of man, to fear the Lord and to obey him. Keep going.
And joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief.
And because of these wicked men who were leading us to join the heathen, we were sold to commit sin. By making us uncircumcised, we were sold to do mischief. By making us make covenants with the heathens, we were sold to do mischief. By making us take on the traditions of the heathens, we were sold to do sin. Keep going.
Verse 16, now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have dominion of 2 realms.
Now he wanted to rule more than just his one kingdom. He was thinking about taking over Egypt. Keep going.
Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death.
So Ptolemy didn't want no smoke with him. Ptolemy did not want to have any conflict with him, and he ran. And Antiochus was able to conquer Egypt, that second kingdom. Keep going.
Thus they got the strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took the spoils thereof. And after that Antiochus had smitten Egypt,
and after he conquered Egypt and took the spoils, right? Keep going.
He returned again in the 143rd year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude.
So after conquering Egypt, he went back to Israel, right? Go back up. He went back to Israel, not just to visit, not just to go on a vacation, not just to see how his conquered people were doing. He went up against them. When someone is going up against you, they're going to make war with you. So he went to go back to war with Jerusalem with a great army, because he left to Egypt with the navy, with a fleet, with horsemen, with warriors. Now he's taking his same army to Israel to go to war. Keep going.
And entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar, and the candlestick of light.
And the what?
And the candlestick of light.
This right here is the candlestick of light. It is the menorah. It has 7 lanterns on it, not 9. So if you look at the picture of this thumbnail, you will see the Romans coming and taking away the sanctuaries, the golden altars, the vessels, and you'll see the candle of light image carved into that stone, into that marble. It has 7 candlesticks because that is what the menorah is. Keep going.
And all the vessels thereof, and the table of the showbread, and the powering vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold, and the veil, and the crowns, and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land.
And he took everything. He took everything that was inside the sanctuary. Everything that was gathered and given to the Lord, he took away and brought it back to his own land. Keep going.
Having made a great massacre.
A what?
A great massacre.
Now, he didn't just steal everything. He put many people to death. It said a great massacre. Keep going.
And spoken very proudly.
And he was proud of his actions. He rejoiced in his warriors and himself putting to death the people of Jerusalem, our ancestors. Keep going.
Therefore there was great mourning in Israel.
Why wouldn't there be? Sons were hanged. Daughters were hanged. Mothers and grandmothers were sexually assaulted. Fathers and grandfathers were probably beheaded and put into an early grave. It was great mourning, and it was a great mourning, sorrow, suffering throughout the land of Israel. Keep going.
In every place where they were, so that the princes and elders mourned. The virgins and young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was changed. Every bridegroom took up lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness.
Everyone was in despair at this point. Even if it was your wedding day, go back up. Even if it was your wedding day, your newlywed wife was in the marriage chamber crying. The groom was taking lamentations and crying to the Lord, asking, why is this happening to us? Everyone was devastated. Keep going.
The land also was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob was covered with confusion.
No one knew what to do because of such great devastation that just took place because of what just happened with the Greek army. Keep going.
And after 2 years fully expired,
And you would think 2 years have gone by. Keep going.
the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Judah, who came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude.
And after 2 years, the king sent a tax collector with a great army back into Jerusalem. Keep going.
And spake peaceable words unto them.
And did what?
Spake peaceable words unto
Hold
them.
that and give me the scripture smooth as butter, Baba Kishra. So this tax collector was sent by the king, who 2 years earlier came and stole everything out of Israel and from the sanctuary and had a great massacre of the people. Now 2 years later, the king sent a tax collector. Now a tax collector doesn't do anything but collect taxes. So after 2 years of massacre and of stealing whatever Israel had, someone is coming in to collect more. And he's not coming by himself. He's coming with an army. Just like the king came 2 years ago with an army as well. Read this in Psalms 55 and 21.
The words of his mouth were smoother than butter.
His what?
The words of his mouth were smoother than butter.
Go back to the other scripture. What did he do?
He spake peaceable words unto them.
He did what?
Spake peaceable words unto
The
them.
words that came out of his mouth were smooth like butter. And he spoke peaceable to the people. Keep reading this.
But all was deceit.
But what?
All was deceit.
Go back to the other scripture in Psalms 55 and 21.
But war was in his heart.
But what?
But war was in his
It
heart.
says war was in his heart. Go back to the other scripture. After he spoke peaceable unto him, what was it?
But all was deceit.
War was in his heart. He spoke very nicely and calmly and, probably smiling at everyone and grabbing people's hands, like how the Pope does when he's walking down the street.
Right.
But war was in his heart. He was filled with deceit. Although he said a lot of nice things, his mind was nothing but deceit within his mind. He said whatever he needed to say to trick you and to think that that he came in peace, that nothing wrong would happen. Keep going.
For when they had given him credence.
For what?
When they had given him credence.
From when they bent their knee to him, when they have given him his respect. Keep going.
He fell suddenly upon the city.
He did what?
Fell suddenly upon the city.
Now, he didn't just, trip on a pavement that is higher than the rest of the pavement or tripped over a twig on the street. He fell suddenly on them. His army was sent to come and destroy Israel again, to go to war against the people after he presented himself in a peaceful manner. Keep going.
And smote it very sore, and destroyed much people of Israel.
He destroyed much people of Israel and destroyed the city again. Keep going.
And when he had taken the spoils of the city.
So he really didn't come to collect taxes. He came to take and destroy. Because if you're coming to collect taxes, that means there's an agreed upon price that must be paid. And once that is paid, it is taken back to the king. He didn't collect taxes. He came to steal and cause more devastation. Keep going.
He set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and walls thereof on every side. But the women and children took they captive and possessed the cattle.
So it wasn't enough for him to burn down our homes and our buildings. He took our wives, he took our women, he took our children as slaves back with him. Keep going.
Then builded they the city of David with a great and strong wall, and with mighty towers, and made it a stronghold for them.
And he built up a fortress. Keep going.
And they put therein a sinful nation.
And now we have a nation of wicked people, of heathens, staying in this fortress, ruling over us. Keep going.
Wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. They stored it also with armor and victuals. And when they had gathered together the spoils of Jerusalem, they laid them up there, and so they became a sore snare.
And it was a trap for anyone who dared to think they can enter and try to take what they stolen. It was going to be a snare for you. It was going to cost you your life if you think you were going to come up against this fortress that these heathens built. Keep going.
For it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary.
For what?
A place to lie in wait against the sanctuary.
So when we decided to rebuild our sanctuary and rededicate it and make it beautiful again for us to worship, they were going to come and wait for us to do that just to tear it back down again. Keep going.
And an evil adversary to Israel.
And that's exactly what they were. Enemies, adversaries of the most wicked kind to us. Keep going.
Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary and
what?
defiled it.
And did what?
And defiled it.
They unalived us everywhere. In the sanctuary, outside the sanctuary, in our homes, on the streets. They defiled our land. They defiled and polluted our holy place. Keep going.
Insomuch that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them, whereupon the city was made an habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her, and her own children left her.
It became so bad that we started to flee our own city, our own town, our own land. It became so bad that it was, think of it as an abandoned town. Ever seen old Western movies? And you see that little, what do you call it, the dust balls going around, and it's empty. That's what our own city, our own town became, because we fled from it. And strangers and heathens started to take over our land. Keep going.
Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths into reproach, her honor into contempt.
We lost our glory because of these events. The stories and these battles and these wars that we are hearing is the catalyst to what led up to the Feast of Dedication, which is HACHAANAKAH. Keep going.
As had been her glory, so was her dishonor increased.
So our glory was increased. We were ruling ourselves. We were able to take care of ourselves. And now because of us wanting to listen to wicked men, like these Christian pastors and these Muslim imams and these politicians, because we listen to them to join our oppressor, now instead of being great and glorifying the Lord, our honor has become great with sadness. Our honor has become great with destruction. Keep going.
Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people.
Now, to make matters worse, this so-called King Antiochus wrote to everyone in his kingdom and wanting us all to be one, like America. Keep going.
And everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed, according to the commandment of the king.
What should everyone do?
Leave his laws.
So they destroyed our sanctuary. They stole all our holy items, our showbread, our altars. They defiled them. They stole our candlestick. They unalived us everywhere. They took our women and children captives. There was great mourning for years upon years. And now, after all this destruction and the despair we face, the king thinks that we should be able to leave our laws. That is what he's expecting. For us to abandon our God, for us to abandon our covenant with God, for us to abandon our traditions and our custom and the culture that we have known since our great forefathers like Abraham and Isaac. Right? Keep going.
Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion.
What did we do?
Consented to his religion.
Many of us decided to, you know what, yes. You know why? Because they could not see any hope. They gave up on God. They stopped believing that they had a power that was alive. They stopped believing that God split the sea. They stopped believing that God gave them manna from heaven. They stopped believing that Moses cracked the rock and water came out of it. They stopped believing that the walls of Jericho fell down after the seventh time running about it and blowing the trumpet. They stopped believing that when Moses had his hands up holding the staff with Aaron and I think Eleazar, Aaron and Eleazar beside him, that we would win battles. They stopped believing in all that. All that went out the window because of how much they were suffering. Just like here in America. 400 years of slavery, 500 years of colonization, we've given up our beliefs on God. We accepted the fact that we have European names like Jose and Vega. We've accepted the fact that we had European names like Hightower and Johnson and Washington. We've accepted this. And now in 2023, we think being born in Mexico and being named Jose Vargas is a Mexican name, when Jose Vargas is a Spaniard name. We've accepted that being called Marquise Frederick, right, is an American name. It's a black name when it's actually an English name, a Scottish name, an Irish name. We've accepted these things, just like the Israelites consented to religion of King Antiochus. Keep going.
And sacrificed unto idols.
And did what?
Sacrificed unto idols.
Now that was a law. If I'm not mistaken, one of the 10 commandments, to worship God and only God alone. To not to sacrifice and worship idols and false images and graven images. And here we are, sacrificing unto idols. Keep going.
And profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land. Now
we're being told, abandon your God and your beliefs and start obeying the king and following the laws of this new religion. Keep going.
And forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation.
So we were just forced to commit all types of horrendous sins, not circumcising our children, sacrificing pig and eating pig, one of the worst things that we can do, right? Keep going.
To the end they might forget the law.
So what was the goal?
They might forget the law.
The goal was to get us Israelites to forget the laws of God, to forget the customs of God, to forget the culture that we have grown. Keep going.
And change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king,
And if you did not obey, if you did not convert, if you did not abandon your God and your beliefs and do what the king said, what was the punishment?
he said he should die.
He should what?
Die.
If you refused to eat swine, you would what?
Die.
If you circumcise your son on the 8th day, what would happen?
He should die.
If you wanted to keep the Sabbath holy, you would do, what would happen to you?
Die.
This is what would happen to you if you wanted to keep the traditions of our forefathers. Keep going.
In the selfsame manner wrote he to his whole kingdom, and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice.
Everyone must sacrifice.
City by city. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit, every one that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land.
Now, many people decided to abandon their God, our God, and commit these evils. Practice this new religion of the king. Keep going.
And drove the Israelites into secret places.
And what?
Drove the Israelites into secret places.
So now we tumble. The water captain's a car. It's called tumbleweed. Another one I was trying to make reference before. The water captain's a car. So now the people who wanted to keep the law had to go run and hide into secret places in order to keep their laws of God, to keep their customs, to keep the Sabbath holy, to circumcise their sons secretly. We had to go into secret places. We had to run in fear of us being put to our demise. Keep going.
Even wheresoever they could flee even wheresoever they could flee for succor. Now the 15th day of the month Caslu, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar.
Does anyone know in this specific verse what the abomination of desolation upon the altar is? Brother A, you want to give it a shot? What the abomination of desolation is that was put on the altar. I said it earlier. Yes. They were doing this for an idol. What do you do on an altar? If you committed a sin and you wanted to be forgiven, what would you bring to the altar or to the priest? Which is an offering. Also, it could be called yes, also it can be called Brother T, you want to help him out? If I'm bringing you an offering, a burnt offering, I'm also bringing a sacrifice. So they would sacrifice on the altar. So if you committed a sin and you couldn't give a whole ram, you couldn't give a sheep, maybe you might be able to afford to bring a turtle dove or to the priest, so that way they can use that as your burnt offering, as your sacrificial offering. So what were they sacrificing that was called the abomination of desolation? Brother T? Yes. In this particular verse, this abomination of desolation is swine, pig, that was being sacrificed on our altar, which is profane to us, which is absolutely disgusting and disrespectful to our Lord. Sacrificing an unclean beast on our holy altar. Now, to give you more understanding of what the abomination of desolation is, the abomination of desolation is anything that gets you to sacrifice to something that is other than the Lord. Christmas is coming around the corner. That Christmas tree that's going up in many people's homes, that's an abomination of desolation. The presents that are going underneath that Christmas tree, that's an offering. That's a sacrifice to that Christmas tree, which is the abomination of desolation. Anything that you worship, that you sacrifice to, that is the abomination of desolation. But for here, at this particular on this precept and this time, The abomination of desolation was sacrificing swine on our altar. Keep going.
And builded idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets.
So we began to worship all different types of gods, began sacrificing and giving burnt offerings to all these fake gods except our own. Keep going.
And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law
What
which
they do?
found, rent in pieces.
What does that mean? Rent in pieces. What is that? Yes. Yes. Any book that contained the law, any of our ancient manuscripts, our Torah, our Tanakh, they would find them, tear them up in pieces, and did what?
They burnt them with fire.
And then burnt them all in fire. Because you can take the pieces and rewrite it down on another sheet of paper or another piece of papaya. You know what I'm saying? But if you burn it, you have nothing to look back to. Papyrus. Yes, I said papaya. I was kind of hungry. Shout out papaya. I remember growing up, I think it was beef hot dogs. If I'm not mistaken.
Fire drinks. Fire.
Yeah, the papaya drinks, fire. Shout out Nathan's too. But anyway, back on topic. They would burn everything, right? Keep going.
And wheresoever was found with any, the book of the testament.
And if you were found with the book of the testament, the Tanakh, the Torah, what would happen?
Or if any consented to the law.
And if you obeyed the laws of your God, of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob,
the king's commandment was that they should put him to death.
the king said you should be put to death if you were found with any type of artifact that contained the laws of our God, or you were still keeping the laws of our God. Keep going.
Thus did they by their authority unto the Israelites every month.
They did this every single month to us Israelites. You had to sacrifice or you'd be put to death. You had to convert or be put to death. You have to follow the laws of this new religion or be put to death. Keep going. Yeah.
Salakio, this is so heavy because it's so hard for people sometimes to understand when they hear Gentiles in the New Testament that they can be Israelites. But if you imagine generations going through this, a couple hundred years later, they're not even remembering that they're Israelites.
What is an Israelite after 300 years of slavery? What is an Israelite after you have been after you are a descendant of slaves in Tennessee? What is the tribe of Judah when you've been brainwashed to accept that you are a slave growing up in Mississippi? What is an Israelite? You don't know. What's an Israelite when you've been wiped out because Columbus gave you blankets filled with smallpox?
Right.
Huh? What is that? Now you practice Santeria, and you're worshiping Mother Atabe because you've been wiped out so much that you believe in this created religion of Negro slaves and mixed in with Catholicism and mixed in with worshiping Mother Earth and Father, Son, and the moon and the stars. You're a Gentile. That's what a Gentile is. A Gentile is not a race of people. A Gentiles can be Israelites, but predominantly are heathens or people that act like heathens. Keep going.
Thus did they by their authority unto the Israelites every month to as many as were found in the cities. Now the 25th day of the month they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God, at which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised.
Now here, women who were still having their children circumcised, they were put to death. Keep going.
And they hanged the infants.
They did what?
They hanged the infants.
That's kind of like bashing the children against the rocks.
Right.
That's kind of like what Andrew Jackson, who's on the $20 bill, did to pregnant Indian women,
Right.
cutting their stomachs open and feeding the babies to dogs. That's kind of like taking black babies and feeding them to alligators.
Right.
That's what this is. Hanging the infants, unaliving these infants, these poor little babies, our ancestors, our brothers and our sisters. That's exactly what they did. Keep going.
And rifled their houses, and slew them that had circumcised them. Howbeit, many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing.
And thank the Lord
Right.
for being so merciful and inspiring the will of some of our forefathers and foremothers to do anything at all costs to keep the laws of God. Because without them, we would not be here today. Without men like this, women like this, without brothers and that woman who all were put to death for not wanting to eat swine flesh on that king's birthday, who were all cut into pieces and cooked in a cauldron, because of people like that, the Lord would not have mercy on us because of how disgusting and sinful we were. But thank God for brothers and sisters like this that would rather die than disobey the Lord. And that is how we all have to be, especially in 2023. As we come closer and closer to World War III. This is the end. We think that this is the end of the world for us. But somehow through the grace and mercy of the Lord, we're here right now. And we're still facing the same issues. 300 years ago, they were unaliving our children. Fast forward 300 years ago, many of us think we're Christians as a race of people. Many of us think that being a Muslim is a race of people. Many of us are brothers that grew up from the same father and mother, but one's a Republican, one's a Democrat. One voted for Trump and one voted for Biden. And we're at each other's throats because we are Gentiles. We accepted the religion, the ideology, the doctrines, the way of life of our slave masters. And it's just repeating itself right here. Keep going.
Wherefore they chose rather to die.
Chose what?
Rather to die.
And that is a very, very great thing to have, to hold dear to your heart, that you would rather die than abandon your Lord, than abandon our laws that God told us to keep. Keep going. It's very honorable.
That they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died.
And they were put to death. Keep going.
And there was very great wrath upon Israel.
And we suffered greatly because just because a few of us kept the laws doesn't mean that we aren't getting punished for what the multitude is doing. The rest of our people are still being Christians. The rest of our people are still eating pork, crab, shrimp, lobster, octopus, squid, shellfish, oysters, iguanas, hamsters, raccoons, rabbits. Our people are still eating these things. Our people are still Christians. Our people are still Muslims. Our people are still Catholics. Our people are still dabbing in witchcraft. Our people are still thinking they can join the Illuminati. Our people are still thinking that being a pop star and showing your breasts and shaking your behind is the only way to be successful, or that shooting a basketball through a hoop or kicking a football through two posts. We're so indoctrinated in this way of life. This is why we're suffering. Great wrath is still upon Israel. Keep going.
Chapter 2 and verse 1. In those days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Jarib, from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Modan.
Now here in chapter 2 of 1 Maccabees, we're going to start reading about men that we should be thankful for, that kept the zeal of the Lord, that wanted to obey the will of the Lord. Keep going.
And he had 5 sons, Johanan called Caddis, Simon called Thasi, Judas who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar called Araran, and Jonathan whose surname was Aphas.
Now these are the names of his sons.
And when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and Jerusalem, he said, Woe is me! Wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people and of the holy city, and to dwell there, when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers.
Now he's lamenting, he's crying. He's in disbelief that he's seeing all these sins that his people are partaking. He's crying to the Lord, like, how could this have happened, that we are now eating swine, that we no longer worship you and follow your laws? How did all these atrocities happen in the sight of the Lord? Where did we go wrong? Keep going.
Her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets, her young men with the sword of the enemy. What nation hath not had a part in her kingdom, and gotten her of her spoils?
Now he's asking questions that he already knows the answers to. But he's just in such disbelief that he can't believe what he's witnessing. He can't believe the things that he's heard. He can't believe that this is the state that his people are in such a low state with no honor, with no glory, with no sanctuary to make sacrifices to, with no priest teaching the law, where no children are being circumcised and keeping that honor that was made to the Lord. We rather willfully be Romans, be Greeks, be French and Italians and Americans. He's seeing all these blasphemies taking place. Keep going.
All her ornaments are taken away. Of a free woman she has become a bondslave. And behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty, and our glory is laid waste, and the Gentiles have profaned it. To what end, therefore, shall we live any longer?
And he said, there's no point in living. Everything is destroyed. How can we continue to go on? We might as well commit suicide because of the sights of all these horrendous atrocities, because of the sight of our people committing sin willfully. Keep going.
Then Mattathias and his sons rent their clothes and put on sackcloth and mourned very sore.
And so they began to mourn, trying to ask God for forgiveness, feeling sorrow. Keep going.
In the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city Modan to make them sacrifice.
Now here comes the king's officers who made the people give up their belief in the Lord, give up their laws, and made them sacrifice. Here he comes into the city. Keep going.
And when many of Israel came unto them, Mattathias also and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias on this wise.
And this is what the officer said to Mattathias.
Thou art a ruler. And
he says, you are ruler. Keep going.
And an honorable and great man in this city.
And you, people know. People know who you are, Mattathias. You are a great man. You have great influence in this land. People listen to what you have to say. People follow you. Keep going.
And strengthened with sons and brethren.
And you have a great family. You have what? 5 sons. You have uncles and nephews. Everyone that follows you. You have a great family behind you. Keep going.
Now therefore come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment.
So let me tell you, because of how influential you are to your people, you should be the first one to come over here and obey the king's commandments. Keep going.
Like as all the heathen have done.
Be like the rest of the heathen. Do what the king tells you to do. Keep going.
Yea, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem.
And it's not just the heathen, but many of the people, many of your fellow brothers, your fellow Israelites, do the same thing. They obey and they listen to the king. Now we want you to get the rest of the people to obey the king. Keep going.
Yea, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem. So shalt thou and thine house be in the number of the king's friends.
And you know what? And by you doing this, you will be a man that is reputable in the eyes of the king. You and your family and your sons will be in the king's court. You will be honored by the king. You will be as the king's friend. Keep going.
And thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards.
And I tell you what, we're going to give you an NBA contract signed for $50 million. You keep hitting home runs like Alex Rodriguez, and you're going to have a $215 million contract for 5 years. All you got to do is hit a golf ball like Tiger Woods, and you're going to get endorsements from Nikes, Adidas, Gatorade, Powerade, Prime. Listen, all you got to do is keep fighting in this ring, and Dana White is going to make sure you get at least $50 million every fight. You're going to be rich. You're going to be loaded, and all you got to do is obey the king. Keep going.
Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice.
And this is the response of a man who loves the Lord. What you're about to read is what you are about to read and listen to is a response from a man who has zeal to do whatever the Lord has commanded him to do. Keep going.
Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him,
Even though everyone that the king rules over obeys him
and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers,
and have given up all their beliefs and all their religions and all their customs that have been passed down from their forefathers,
and give consent to his commandments,
and willingly accept to do what the king has commanded,
yet will I
but myself
and my sons
and my sons
and my brethren
and the rest of my people,
walk in the covenant of our fathers.
we ain't going to do the damn thing the king wants us to do. We're going to obey our God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We're going to follow his statutes, obey his laws, and adhere to his commandments. That's what we're going to do. Keep going.
God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances.
May God strike us down right here, right now, with a lightning bolt or with a flame of fire from the earth if we ever think to disobey him and give up our laws. Keep going.
We will not hearken to the king's words
We're not going to be doing that anytime soon.
to go from our religion, either on the right hand or the left.
We're not even going to bend a little bit. I'm not even going to eat just a tiny bit of pork and then keep the rest of the laws of my God. I'm not even going to light an incense to the God of Jupiter and then keep the rest of the laws of God. We're not going to do none of that. We're going to keep the law in its entirety. Keep going.
Now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all.
Now here comes Tyler Perry. Here comes Will Smith. Here comes the one, oh man, I hate this guy the most. Here comes Steve Harvey with his big clown teeth. You know what I'm saying? Like, here comes Eddie Long. Here comes, substitute any black, Hispanic, or Native American sellout that you can think of. Insert his face into this image right here. Keep going.
To sacrifice on the altar, which was at Modan according to the king's commandment.
So although the most influential man of all of Israel, Mattathias, said no, he won't do it, there was some disgusting slimeball Jew that was standing on the corner and said, well, he don't do it, I'm going to do it. If he ain't going to sell the drugs, I'll sell it. If he ain't going to go shoot that person, I'll do it. You're going to give me these riches? Will I get this gold? Will I be the king's friend? I'll do it. I'll do it for less than that. This sellout. Keep going.
Which thing when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal.
He was what?
Inflamed with zeal.
Imagine seeing this crooked bastard after you just stood firm for the Lord, and here you go, some guy that you used to go shopping at the supermarket with, saying he's going to give up the laws of God in your face. He's going to go and sacrifice this pork, this pig, on the altar that you hold dear to your heart. This is what he's going to do. Keep going. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
And Salaki, it's so heavy because we all know Jakes with that type of personality that would do something like that and it would vigorously defend it. Like, oh, you know, I got to do what I got to do.
Yeah.
We all know people with that. You can picture it.
Yeah, I got kids. I got to take care of them. That's why I'm selling these rocks. Yeah, I got kids too, but you don't see me selling drugs. Well, I got kids and I'm single and I'm a single mother, so that's why I'm prostituting myself. Well, you know, I'm a single mother too, and I'm not prostituting myself. These are sellouts. People who have no honor, have no self-respect, don't see any glory in obeying the God of their forefathers. Again, these people have given up on their customs. They've forgotten about what Moses did, what Joshua did. They forgot what all these people in their history book did for them for right now. Keep going.
He was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled.
And he couldn't control himself anymore.
Neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment. Wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar.
Listen, he said, you know what? God, may the Lord forgive me, but right now I'm not going to allow this Jew to disrespect the Lord in front of me. And he put him to his death on that altar. That altar where he was going to cut that pig open and have it bleed all over the altar. He killed his own brother on that altar for disrespecting the Lord in front of him, for dishonoring the Lord in front of him, for engaging in the abominable desolation on the altar. He put him to death. Keep going.
Also the king's commissioner who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down.
And he put that officer to death as well. The one that was trying to get him to commit sin, he put him to death and tore down the altar. That way no one can commit any type of blasphemies on the altar of the Lord. Keep going.
Thus dealt he zealously for the law of God, like as Phinehas did unto Zambri, the son of Salom.
Now, if you go back, I think it's in the book of Numbers, if I'm not mistaken. I think in the book of Numbers, where Aaron's grandson, Phinehas, put a javelin through an Israelite man who was sleeping with a heathen woman after Moses was putting men to death for sleeping with heathen women. All right? That's just a reference going back to the Old Testament. Keep going.
And Mattathias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, whosoever is zealous of the law and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me.
So he basically put out a cry and said, if you want to follow the Lord, then you're going to follow me. Keep going. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, come with me if you want to live. Come with me if you want to serve the Lord. That's exactly what he was doing. Keep going.
So he and his sons fled into the mountains and left all that ever they had in the city.
And they abandoned everything that they hold dear to go into the wilderness because that's how much they wanted to serve the Lord. Keep going.
Then many that sought after justice and judgment.
And those who had the same mindset, that wanted justice for the crimes that happened to their people, that wanted the judgments of the Lord, keep going,
went down into the wilderness to dwell there.
Also went into the wilderness. Keep going.
Both they and their children, and their wives, and their cattle, because afflictions increased sore upon them.
Because they wanted to escape the punishments and the wrath of the Greek king who was inflicting all this pain onto Israel. Keep going.
Now when it was told the king's servants and the host that was at Jerusalem in the city of David that certain men who had broken the king's commandment were gone down into the secret places in the wilderness.
And when the king found out about what had happened, keep going.
They pursued after them.
They did what?
They pursued after them.
They chased them down and hunted them down. Keep going.
A great number, and having overtaken them, they camped against them and made war against them on the Sabbath day.
So Mattathias and his sons and the people that followed him went into the mountains, and then the other group of people who wanted justice and judgment fled into a different direction. The king and his army did not go after Mattathias and his sons first. They went after the other people, the other Israelites that fled into the wilderness. And this is him and his army chasing those people, those Israelites. Keep going.
And they said unto them, let that which you have done hitherto suffice. Come forth and do according to the commandment of the king, and you shall live.
And now it's the Sabbath day. And these people are being told, listen, it's okay about what had happened back in town. It's okay about what happened back in the city. Let's forget all about it. All you got to do is come out from where you're at, come back to the city, and just do what the king tells you to do. And everything will be Gucci. Everything will be fine. There'll be nothing for you to worry about. Remember, his words are smooth as butter. He came to speak peaceably, but in his heart was deceit. Keep going.
But they said, we will not come forth.
And they told him, no, we're not going to come out.
Neither will we do the king's commandment to profane the Sabbath day.
And we're not going to obey the king and disobey our God on our holy day. Keep going.
So then they gave them the battle with all speed.
And so they went to war. They rode up all on them. Keep going.
Howbeit, they answered them not.
And they did what?
They answered them not.
And you know what those Israelites did? They decided, since it was the Sabbath, we're not going to do nothing. I see you riding in with horses and axes and spears and arrows and javelins and war hammers and what you call it, chariots pulled by horses We see all this coming, but we're not going to answer you. We're not going to pick up arms and fight you on the Sabbath day. Keep going.
Neither cast they a stone at them.
We're not even going to cast stones like those little Palestinians are doing to those Israelis. We're not going to throw rocks at you. Keep going.
Nor stop the places where they lay hid.
And we did nothing. They decided to do nothing against this onslaught, this impending onslaught. Keep going.
But said, let us die in our innocence.
What did they say?
Let us die all in our innocence.
We're just unalive us on this holy day as we give thanks to the Lord and keep the Lord's commandments. We are innocent of any sin that you may have wanted us to do in the eyes of the Lord, and we're ready to die. Keep going.
Heaven and earth shall testify for us.
Because the angels will witness what we did here today and how we did not commit sin to the Lord. Keep going.
That you put us to death wrongfully.
And that we were put to death unrighteously, wrongfully, without a cause. Keep going.
So they rose up against them in battle on the Sabbath, and they slew them with their wives and children and their cattle, to the number of 1,000 people.
So because they didn't want to fight for their God, because they did not want to fight for their laws and their customs and their people, on the Sabbath day, they were all put to death. Now, I don't know about you, but priests work on the Sabbath. Priests would forgive people, will help the Lord, will help the people be forgiven by the Lord for their sins on the Sabbath. The priests always worked on the Sabbath. Why couldn't you stand up and fight for your God on the Sabbath? Keep going.
Now when Mattathias and his friends understood hereof, they mourned for them right sore.
Now when Mattathias found out about what happened, that on the Sabbath day, these Israelites did not even fight back against their oppressors, they were sad. They mourned for them. Keep going.
And one of them said to another, if we all do as our brethren have done, and fight not for our lives and laws against the heathen.
Do what? And fight?
And fight not for our lives and laws against the heathen.
If we don't do what?
And fight not for our lives and laws against the heathen.
If we don't fight for our laws, for our lives against this heathen, if we don't fight to teach blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans that they are the real Israelites according to the Bible, against Christianity, against Islam, against the American government, against the powers of this world, keep going.
They will now quickly root us out of the earth.
There will be no more Israelites on the face of this earth. If it wasn't for men learning that they were Israelites according to the Bible and teaching other people, we would not be here in this room. We would no longer be on this earth. But we have to fight for our laws. We have to fight for our lives. We have to fight for our God, whether it's the Sabbath or it's not the Sabbath. As priests, we're going to work every single day. Whether that work is growing food to feed our people, or whether that work is healing the sick, whether that work is going to war every Saturday on these street corners, we're going to fight for our lives and we're going to fight for our laws. Keep going.
At that time, therefore, they decreed, saying, whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Sabbath day.
And whoever wants smoke, whoever wants to go to war, we're going to go to war. Whoever wants to set it off, let's set it off. It doesn't matter if it's on the high holy day. We're going to go to war. Keep going.
We will fight against him.
We'll do what?
Fight against him.
We'll fight against anyone, even if it is the Sabbath. Whatever enemy it is, whether it's another Israelite that's coming up against the real priest of the Lord, we're going to fight you. We're going to fight you and we're going to win. Because we're not going to stand down just because it's the Sabbath. We're going to fight for our laws and we're going to fight for our lives. Keep going.
Neither will we die all as our brethren that were murdered in the secret places.
And ain't no way we're going to be put to death like a bunch of suckers. We're not going to just stand here willy-nilly, complacent with being put to death. We're going to fight to the very last breath of air leaves our body. Keep going.
Then came there unto him a company of Assyrians.
And you know what happened? A group of other Israelites called the Assyrians came to Mattathias. Keep going.
Who were mighty men of Israel.
Who are what?
Mighty men of Israel.
Warriors. People with great resources and influence came to Mattathias. Keep going.
even all such as were voluntarily devoted unto the law.
They were what?
Voluntarily devoted unto the law.
They weren't forced to keep the law. No one was putting a sword to their back. They willingly, willfully wanted to keep God's laws. They devoted themselves to keeping the laws of God. Keep going.
Also, all they that fled for persecution joined themselves unto them,
And anyone that fled persecution from the king went to join Mattathias. Keep going.
and were a stay unto them. So they joined their forces and smote sinful men in their anger.
And you know what they did? Whenever they would go, whatever Israelites were living in sin, they put them to death. Keep going.
And wicked men in their wrath.
They put those wicked men that committed sin willfully against the Lord, put to death. Keep going.
But the rest fled to the heathen for succor.
And those that weren't put to death, they fled to the heathen for safety. They fled to the Greek king to be saved from Mattathias and the zealots of the Lord. Keep going.
Then Mattathias and his friends went round about and pulled down the altars.
And Mattathias and his band of warriors started destroying all these fake altars to these false gods. Keep going.
And what children soever they found within the coast of Israel uncircumcised.
And any children that was any Israelite child that was not circumcised, they circumcised them. They made them keep the customs of the God. Keep going.
Those they circumcised valiantly.
And they did it with pride. They did it with honor, because that is what we are supposed to have. We are supposed to have pride in these laws. We're supposed to have honor in obeying God's laws. We're supposed to feel some type of valiant. We're supposed to be valiant in keeping this code alive and passing it down. Keep going.
They pursued also after the proud men, and the work prospered in their hand.
And as they pursued and hunted down these proud men who did not want to obey, they just kept growing in notability and fame. Keep going.
So they recovered the law out of the hand of the Gentiles.
And it came to a point where they were able to get the holy book away from the heathens. Keep going.
And out of the hand of kings. Neither suffered they the sinner to triumph.
And now that they got their holy book, the floodgates were open now. They got the laws of God in their possession, and they were going to do everything that book said for them to do. Keep going.
Now when the time drew near that Mattathias should die, he said unto his sons, now hath pride and rebuke gotten strength, and the time of destruction, and the wrath of indignation.
Now Mattathias is getting old.
Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers.
Be what? Because this is very important.
Be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers.
He wanted his sons. He wanted us today to be zealous for the Lord, to give our lives for our laws. Keep going.
Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time. So shall ye receive great honor and an everlasting name.
And here in 2023, we have to remember what brothers like Mattathias and his sons did. We have to remember what Joshua did. We have to remember what Isaac did, and what Joseph did, and what Daniel did. We have to remember what Obadiah did, what Isaiah did. We have to remember all these things our forefathers did. That way it can give us courage to do great things as well, to stand firm in our beliefs on the Lord. Keep going.
Was not Abraham found faithful in temptation, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness? Joseph in the time of his distress kept the commandment and was made Lord of Egypt. Phinehas our father, in being zealous and fervent, obtained the covenant of an everlasting priesthood. Jesus, for fulfilling the word, was made a judge in Israel. Caleb, for bearing witness before the congregation, received the heritage of the land. David, for being merciful, possessed the throne of an everlasting kingdom. Elias, for being zealous and fervent for the law, was taken up into heaven. Ananias, Azarias, and Mishael, by believing, were saved out of the flame. Daniel, for his innocency, was delivered from the mouth of lions.
And he's recalling all these great men, these notable men that we have learned about as we grew up, that was passed down from generation to generation, and how they never gave up their faith in the Lord, how they never stopped obeying the Lord. Keep going.
And thus consider ye throughout all ages, that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome. Fear not then the words of a sinful man, for his glory shall be dung and worms. Today he shall be lifted up, and tomorrow he shall not be found, because he is returned into his dust, and his thought is come to nothing. Wherefore you, my sons, be valiant, and show yourselves men in the behalf of the law, for by it shall you obtain glory.
And this is what we all should do. Stay right there, go back up. This is what we all should do. We should be valiant. We should show ourselves on behalf of the law. That way we can obtain glory. Not just glory for ourselves, but glory for our nation. Our nation used to be glorious. King Saul, King David, King Solomon, before he started to commit sin, we used to be glorious in the sight of the Lord. And that is the glory that we need to regain. Glory in the sight of the Lord. And we can't do that if we're giving up our customs. We can't do that if we're going to remain Christians. We can't do that if we're going to be Democrats and Republicans. We can't do that if we want to, be a kung fu expert and be a Shaolin monk. We can't do that if we want to be movie stars and compromise our integrity on screen. We can't do that if we're going to shake our behinds like Cardi B and Sexy Red. We can't do those type of things. Fast forward, go to chapter 4. Now, damn, I don't want to go. Go to chapter 3. Go to chapter 3. So much to go over. Such little time. Go ahead, restart from there.
Verse 1. Then his son Judas, called Maccabeus, rose up in his stead.
So Matthias has passed away, right? Now Judas has become the captain, the leader of the army now. Keep going.
And all his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father. And they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. So he got his people great honor, and put on a breastplate as a giant, and girt his warlike harness about him, and he made him battles, protecting the host with his sword.
No, because of all the battles that they've been winning, because they've been obeying the Lord, they're becoming more and more powerful. Keep going.
In his acts he was like a lion, and like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey. For he pursued the wicked and sought them out, and burnt up those that vexed his people. Wherefore the wicked shrunk for fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled, because salvation prospered in his hand.
What?
Because salvation prospered in his hand.
And the reason why salvation was prospering was because he was getting his people to obey God's laws again. And he was getting rid of his people that wanted to commit sin and live like the heathens. Keep going.
He grieved also many kings, and made Jacob glad with his acts, and his memorial is blessed forever. Moreover, he went through the cities of Judah, destroying the ungodly out of them, and turning away wrath from Israel.
And wrath was now beginning to be turned away from Israel. God, the Lord, was now putting his eye and favor back in Israel. And the proof was the accomplishments that they have been able to achieve. Keep going.
So that he was renowned unto the utmost part of the earth, and he received unto him such as were ready to perish.
And because of the fame that he was able to obtain, because of all the battles he was able to win, because of how zealous he was in obeying the laws of God, other Israelites were being drawn to him because they saw hope in him. They saw a way back to salvation in him because he was doing the will of the Lord. Keep going.
Then Apollonius gathered the Gentiles together, and a great host out of Samaria to fight against Israel. Which thing when Judas perceived, he went forth to meet him, and so he smote him and slew him. Many also fell down slain, but the rest fled. Wherefore Judas took their spoils, and Apollonius' sword also, and therewith he fought all his life long.
Any army that came up against them, we would defeat them. Keep going.
Now when Saren, a prince of the army of Syria, heard say that Judas had gathered unto him a multitude and company of the faithful to go out with him to war, he said, I will get me a name and honor in the kingdom, for I will go fight with Judas and them that are with him who despise the king's commandment.
So this heathen thought he would get a name for himself and do something that people couldn't do, which was defeat Judas and the rest of the Israelite warriors. Keep going.
So he made him ready to go up, and there went with him a mighty host of the ungodly to help him, and to be avenged of the children of Israel. And when he came near to the going up of Betharon, Judas went forth to meet him with a small company.
Now, this heathen came with a large army, and Judas came with a very small amount of people. Listen to the conversation that takes place.
Who, when they saw the host coming to meet them, said unto Judas,
By the way, this is Officer Shalayala's, one of his favorite scriptures. Shout out Officer Shalayala, retaining his rank of 5,000.
Damn right.
Give that brother a hand. I always remember this scripture because of Officer Shalayala. Keep going.
who, when they saw the host coming to meet them, said unto Judas, How shall we be able, being so few, to fight against so great a multitude, and so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day?
This warrior says to Judas, how are we going to go up against America? How are we going to go up against the law enforcement of America? How are we going to combat all these religions that our people are stuck in? There's so many of them. America has the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines, the Army, Space Force, the Coast Guard, the Army Reserves. You got Christianity, you got Baptist, you got Protestant, you got Episcopalian, you got this one, and you got Jehovah's Witness, and later Saints of Adventists, and later Saints of John the Apostle. You got all these different things. There's so many of them. It's just a few of us. It's just the Israelite school of universal practical knowledge against all these people. And we've been fasting all day. We're hungry, we're tired, we're weak. We haven't slept that much. We've been marching all day. How are we expected to win against all of America? Keep going.
And so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day, unto whom Judas answered,
And then this is the reply that Judas, the mighty warrior, gave.
It is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few.
It's nothing. It's not a big deal. It's not such a big feat for many people to be defeated by a small amount of people. By a big army to be made to flee in the sight of a small army. That's not a big deal. Keep going.
And with the God of heaven it is all one.
And you know what? With our Lord, all that is possible. You think we can't beat this huge army? There's only 500 of us, and there's 1,000 of them. There's 50,000 horsemen and 20,000 bowmen and 16,000 men with spears and 27,000 men with swords and shields. And there's only 1,000 of us with sticks and clubs, and some have rusty swords. It's just us, right? It's all possible with God. Keep going.
It is all one to deliver with a great multitude or a small company.
It doesn't matter. Because whether we have a great army or a small army, as long as we obey God, He's with us, and we will accomplish and defeat everyone. Keep going.
For the victory of battle standeth not in the multitude of an host, but strength cometh from heaven.
Listen, victory is not about numbers. It's not about how much you can bench press. It's not about how much karate and kung fu and army training you have. Victory comes from who the Lord is with. Victory comes from who the Lord wants to win. And in order for you to be on the side of the victor, you have to stand with and for the Lord. Keep going.
They come against us in much pride and iniquity to destroy us and our wives and children and to spoil us.
They're coming to wipe us off the face of the earth. They're coming to make us sin. They're coming to make us give up on our God. Keep going.
But we fight for our lives.
Or what?
But we fight for our lives.
We're fighting for each other. We're fighting for our women. We're fighting for our children. We're fighting for the elderly, the sick. We're fighting for all of our people. Keep going.
And our laws.
And our what?
And our laws.
God gave us what?
And our laws.
We're supposed to obey what?
And our laws.
We have to keep our what?
Our laws.
These heathens are trying to make us give up our what?
And our laws.
They want us to commit sin and break our what?
Our laws.
We have to keep our
laws.
That's what we got to do. Keep going.
Wherefore the Lord himself will overthrow them before our face. And as for you, be ye not afraid of them.
Listen, don't be afraid, because the Lord will destroy them for us. Keep going.
Now as soon as he had left off speaking, he leapt suddenly upon them. And so Saran and his host was overthrown before him.
And as soon as Judas said the last word, they just started running towards the heathen army. And you know what Saron did? He started to run away. Keep going.
And they pursued them from the going down of Betharon unto the plain, where were slain about 800 men of them.
Now this small army started chasing down this great army, and they put to death 800 in the pursuit. Keep going.
And the residue fled into the land of the Philistines.
And the rest of this great army that had 50,000 horsemen and 25,000 bowmen and 16,000 men with spears and 25,000 men with hammers, they all started fleeing into the land of the Philistines, running away from Judas and the army of Israel. Keep going.
Then began the fear of Judas and his brethren.
Then began the fear of Judas and his brethren. Everyone started to fear Judas. Let's go to chapter 4 so we can get to the Feast of Dedication. We got 5 minutes left. Right, so I want you to start. Wait, going too fast. Start in verse. No, go to verse 30. So more battles are happening here. Start at verse 30. More battles have been happening, and we're winning each battle. People are coming up against us, and they're losing. Keep going.
And when he saw that mighty army, he prayed and said, Blessed art thou, O Savior of Israel, who didst quell the violence of the mighty man by the hand of thy servant David, and gavest the host of strangers into the hands of Jonathan the son of Saul and his armor bearer.
So another even exceedingly greater army is now coming to go up against Judas and his men. Keep going.
Shut up this army in the hand of thy people Israel.
And what are they asking God to do?
Shut up this army in the hand of thy people Israel.
To destroy this army. Keep going.
And let them be confounded in their power and horsemen. Make them to be of no courage, and cause the boldness of their strength to fall away, and let them quake at their destruction. Cast them down with the sword of them that love thee, and let all those that know thy name praise thee with thanksgiving. So they joined battle, and there were slain of the host of Lysias about 5,000 men. Even before them were they slain. Now,
they asked for all this to happen, and that's exactly what God did. He allowed for 5,000 of Lysias men to be put to death. Keep going.
Now when Lysias saw his army put to flight, and the manliness of Judas' soldiers.
The what?
The manliness of Judas' soldiers.
Because we were straight gangsters back then. We were warriors. Keep going.
And how they were ready, either to live or die valiantly.
We were ready to what?
To live or die valiantly.
Are you ready to live and die valiantly? You got to make that decision. We've all committed sin being Gentiles in the world. Now you're learning about who you really are, an Israelite. We're reading about our ancestors who did not want to give up on the laws of God, whose people were giving up on the laws of God. You have to decide, are you going to continue giving up on the laws of your God? Or are you going to live or die valiantly like our forefathers did? It's 2023. Our people right out this door are strung out on heroin, popping pills, twerking, unaliving each other in the subways, right? Filling up the shelters because they're have mental health concerns. Are you going to live and die valiantly, or are you going to stay inside of America and be put to death? Keep going.
He went into Antiochia and gathered together a company of strangers, and having made his army greater than it was, he purposed to come again into Judea.
He wanted to come and fight against Judas again. Keep going.
Then said Judas and his brethren, Behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary.
And Judas said, listen, we got our enemy on the run. They're no match for us. Let us go and fix our sanctuary, our temple. Keep going.
Upon this, all the hosts assembled themselves together and went up into Mount Zion. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, and the altar profaned, and the gates burnt up, and shrubs growing in the courts, as in a forest, or in one of the mountains, yea, and the priest's chambers pulled down.
So they go into Mount Zion, they see the sanctuary, and they see the condition that it's in, the poor condition that it's in. Keep going.
They rent their clothes and made great lamentation and cast ashes upon their heads.
This is what they did. They were asking God for forgiveness, for guidance on what should be done. Keep going.
And fell down flat to the ground upon their faces, and blew an alarm with the trumpets, and cried towards heaven. Then Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress.
Remember that fortress in the city of David that was built? Judas picked certain men to go fight them and conquer that fortress to get back what was stolen from us. Keep going. In the meantime,
until he had cleansed the sanctuary.
While he was having the sanctuary cleansed. Keep going.
So he chose priests of blameless conversation.
Now, he chose priests. He picked men that throughout conversations of knowing each other, people can say he's blameless. I can't think of a sin that he committed. I only know him to be an honorable man and a man who keeps the laws of God. He picked those men to do what?
Such as had pleasure in the law, who cleansed the sanctuary.
And they cleansed the sanctuary. They cleaned it up. They sanctified it again. They made it shine again. Keep going.
And bear out the defiled stones into an unclean place. And when, as they consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offerings, which was profaned, they thought it best to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the heathen had defiled it. Wherefore they pulled it down, and laid up the stones in the mountain of the temple in a convenient place, until there should come a prophet to show them what should be done with them. Then they took whole stones according to the law, and built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary, and the things that were within the temple, and hallowed the courts. They made also new holy vessels, and into the temple they brought the candlestick, and the altar of burnt offerings, and of incense, and the table. And upon the altar they burnt incense, and the lamps that were upon the candlestick they lighted, that they might give light in the temple. Furthermore, they set the loaves upon the table, and spread out the veils, and finished all the works which they had begun to make. Now on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month Caslu, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning, and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings.
Now we're reading about what they've done to rededicate the temple, of all the things that they were able to do. Keep going.
Which they had made. Look at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it, even in that it was dedicated with songs and cisterns and harps and cymbals. Then all the people fell upon their faces, worshiping and praising the God of heaven, who had given them good success. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days.
They did what?
They kept the dedication of the altar 8 days, and offered burnt offerings with gladness, and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise.
So here we just read how they retook the temple, the sanctuary, how they rededicated the temple and the sanctuary, how they put everything back to where it was, how they lit the candlesticks. It didn't say nine candlesticks. As we went over earlier in the previous scriptures, it was always 7. 6 on the side, 1 in the middle. 3 on the right side, 3 on the left side, 1 in the middle. This is the menorah. This is what was lit during the dedication of the temple. Keep going.
They decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold and with shields, and the gates and the chambers they renewed and hanged doors upon them. Thus was there very great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days.
And every year we keep HACHAANAKAH, the feast of dedication, where for 8 days we light the menorah, which has 7 candles and not 8 and not 9, and we feast and we party and we remember the men of old who allowed us to have days like this because of their zeal to obey the Lord. Keep going.
From the 25th day of the month Caslu, with mirth and gladness.
And there we are. That is the history. That is the stories. That is the battles that led up to HACHAANAKAH. I'm Priest Ashagapan of the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Started out at 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commanding General Yohana. And if you are black, Hispanic, or Native American, you should be celebrating the Feast of Dedication with us and remembering with us our forefathers who stood firm in their belief and their conviction in the Lord. Shalom, Israel.